Hello, good people of Earth, and welcome back to Across the Pond, the best podcast in the world. And it's so good to have you back, whether you're watching us live or whether you're listening to us after the fact. Chad, good to see you, buddy. How's it going? I believe you had your second jab today, and I believe the side effects have been quite interesting. So, how are you doing, buddy? Are you hanging in there?
Hanging in there, Barry, by a thread. You know us guys when we're not feeling up to standard. It's the classic man flu, except yeah, this time courtesy of Pfizer and the second jab, which I actually had on Sunday evening. So as we record this is Tuesday evening, and yeah, I mean yesterday, Monday, I was completely fine, no side effects whatsoever, and this morning it had knocked me for a six. Kind of managed to crawl my way out of bed after a very restless night of sleep, night chills, upset stomach, all of that kind of stuff. Not ideal, but I'm hoping it passes by. How are you doing? You've had a busy day.
Yeah, I've been through the ringer a bit in the last couple of days, haven't had much sleep, so also running on fumes a little bit, Chad. But we're gonna marshal whatever energy we have left for this episode, and then I need some sleep tonight. Hopefully, gonna get some decent sleep so I can get back on track. I don't know about you, but when I've had a few nights where I just haven't been hitting that 8 hour like that solid, you start to feel worse and worse and worse and worse. And so hopefully, I'll get a decent night's sleep tonight and get back to my feet tomorrow. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, 100%. It's so important. I know we always talk about it at the beginning of the episode, but it is it is that precious 8 hours sleep is super precious. And now that I think I had officially kind of 5 hours and 50 minutes according to my smartwatch, but it was more than 8 hours in actual sleep times. It was like 8.5 hours. It just shows you that restless sleep. And yeah, I've definitely felt it today. So anyway, glad that it's the end of the day, and we've got a jam-packed episode to look forward to. Loads to talk about today. Let's start with the week that was.
The week that was.
Chad, we're going to start with the biggest story in the world at the moment. Something that's been taking over all the news headlines, and it's quite a tragic story and quite a difficult one to chat about. But we just have to tackle it because that's what Across the Pond is all about. And of course, we're talking about Afghanistan. Over the past couple of days, we've seen a big turmoil in the country as the US have started to exit the country, and all of a sudden the Taliban have come and captured a lot of the major cities, including Kabul, the capital. And so there's lots to chat about here, but let's set the kind of the context for those who haven't been following the story and haven't quite understood what's been going on. 20 years ago, we had the terrorist attacks on the two Twin Towers in New York, and it was one of the biggest attacks we've seen from a terrorist perspective, and probably the most vivid. I mean, everyone can remember where they were when they saw the footage of those towers being hit. And it caused obviously a massive uproar from the Americans and whatnot, and they went back to try and figure out who did it to them and how could they kind of retaliate, how could they get some justice for what happened. And basically, what happened was it kickstarted a war with Afghanistan back then. So George W. Bush decided that he was going to send troops into Afghanistan because that's where they assumed Al Qaeda was at the time, and that was a war, Chad, that lasted years and years and years and years, and slowly and surely the US kind of got a stranglehold in the area, managed to start training the Afghani soldiers, and the whole idea was that they were going to they're going to stay there until they had trained the Afghani army well enough, and giving them the resources and the ammo and whatnot to be able to fight off the Taliban themselves. Because of course the Taliban are this really radical Islamic group that takes the Sharia law to the extreme, and it doesn't really fit with a lot of the democratic ideals we see in the rest of the world. And so the US were there for 20 years in a very, very controversial fashion. A lot of people weren't sure, like, what exactly were they doing there. I mean, they spent, Chad, I think it was over $1 trillion they invested into that war over the 20 years. So it's a humongous investment from them. And lots of people died, of course, in the fighting over the years, and it still wasn't a stable country. Then, if you flash back to about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, when Barack Obama was in office in the US, he was the first guy to kind of say, "Cool, we're going to start putting the troops out," because they were getting pressure from America, saying that why are we spending all this money on these army bases and everything in Afghanistan when we have more pressing problems at home? And so with him, and then Trump as well started to pull troops out of Afghanistan, and Biden as well in his office. And literally a few days ago, it was the last one. All the NATO troops were drawing out and all the US troops were drawing out. And unfortunately, Chad, within a matter of probably 24 to 48 hours, the Taliban came right through and completely controlled the country now. So almost in no time, 20 years of work went down the drain, Chad. The president fled the country. The US fled the country. They evacuated all of their embassies and the ambassadors and all of that. All the soldiers are gone. And unfortunately for the people of Afghanistan, they've been left absolutely high and dry. So yeah, really, really tragic story, and lots and lots coming on this in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure, Chad. But that's kind of the context. Does that kind of help foundation-wise?
Yeah, definitely. I think the Middle East is extremely complex, and there's lots of different bits and pieces. But I think you've done a great summary here. I think worth noting, Barry, obviously as well, that as soon as the US left and the Taliban took over, it was without any resistance. They almost kind of just walked in, and I saw kind of two different maps with the control that the Taliban had, like let's say a month ago. And you can see the highlighted regions, and then as soon as the evacuation happened, it's kind of unilateral type control. So very, very interesting times, and there's certainly, like you said, going to be lots coming from this. Over the next, in the next months, weeks, whatever the case is. But I think as we stand now, the world is trying to digest this and kind of understand what this means. What does this mean for Afghanistan? I think, like you say, USA is concerned, and also the UK had soldiers in Afghanistan as well, through the years. And so the concern was that it, under the Taliban rule in the 90s, was I think it was for 5 years or so, was that it, Afghanistan would become a breeding ground for kind of terrorism, and so this is the reason why all of that expenditure happened to try and kind of keep that under control. And now the question is, well, what are their intentions now? How are they going to rule? And so just before we started recording, so today's the 17th of August, the Taliban actually held a press conference. I don't know if you had a quick watch of any of that, Barry. A couple of things mentioned there, which I found really quite interesting to have a glimpse of too.
Yeah, so I didn't watch the press conference itself, but I was reading a Twitter thread where someone was summarizing the main points. And it's very interesting to watch because, of course, our minds all go to the worst case scenario. If you think about the extremes of Sharia law, there are a lot of concerns about women's rights, about kind of human rights in general, because under the traditional Taliban kind of worldview and ideology, it's that radical Islam fundamentalism where it's like women cannot be educated, women cannot leave the house unaccompanied by a man, women can't drive, all of those like things that we've tried to move past in our progressive sort of Western ideal of what society should be. And the Taliban realize, of course, that there's going to be retaliation from the democratic world. And so this almost feels like a little bit of a let's try and get ahead of this thing before it gets too crazy. And they apologize for some of the deaths that happened as they were taking over. They apologized for the way it happened. They said they made some mistakes. And then they try to reassure everyone, saying that, cool, they are not going to infringe on women's rights. They're not going to kind of kill anybody. They're going to pardon anyone who is fighting against them as part of the Afghani army. And they made a whole bunch of these promises almost, Chad. It almost felt like a PR spin, which is very strange from a terrorist organization. And so, it makes this thing much more complicated than you'd like to admit. And I think what I wanted to chat about, Chad, what I think is quite interesting about this is that from our perspective, this obviously looks like evil, right? It looks like an evil group of people, and why would they do this? And we're heartbroken for the people in Afghanistan. But from their perspective, they think they're doing the right thing. And that's the strange thing about human psychology and about ideology is that you can get yourself into this state where you're convinced you're doing something the right thing. And unfortunately, the other person thinks they're also doing the right thing. And so that's why this is not a simple good versus evil type situation. It's very much a battle of ideas, a battle of ideology, and essentially religion at the end of the day, because that's where a lot of this is coming from. So what are your thoughts on the press conference, Chad? Like, what did you think when you watched some of it?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it was a total PR stunt and PR spin. You even heard some of the the people chairing the press conference asking for international questions, because obviously a big part of that was reassuring locals and saying we want you to stay, we need your skills, all of that kind of stuff. We'll give you we'll forgive you for everything you've done if you have helped the opposition, all of that kind of stuff. But then then to actively go and ask for international journalists and their questions, there's no doubt that they're trying to set the scene and try to get cooperation from the Western countries. Of course, when the Taliban were in rule before, I think there were only 5 countries or something that actually recognized them as the ruler of the time. And so the question now is whether neighboring countries and certainly the Western world are going to actually recognize officially and deal with them as the government of the day. And then, of course, you've also got to look at all of the, the international aid that goes to Afghanistan, and whether that's in jeopardy now as well. And so, I think the reasons for having a PR type stunt and a press conference like this are clear. They, of course, want to portray that now they're ruling, everything is kind of under control. Like you say, all of those statements they've made that women will have rights within Islamic law, so that's within that Sharia law. We obviously don't know what all of that kind of stuff means, and straight off the bat, I was watching BBC, and you already see conflicting stories from people on the ground who have heard of people getting assassinated and people knocking on doors and looking for those who were assisting, translators, all of those kind of things. So whether you believe everything that was said in the press conference, or whether it is a case of waiting to see what they actually do, in terms of their actions, I definitely think the world is going to be watching with bated breath.
Definitely. And there's been some really kind of damaging scenes and some really scary pieces of video that have been coming out of these places, like you say, showing the absolute fear and concern from a lot of the Afghani people. I don't know if you can pull this video up on the notes here, Chad, but this video really kind of got into my bones, because it shows a US plane leaving, obviously taking some US citizens or whatever going, and thousands of Afghanistan people trying to hold onto the plane, like desperately trying to get into the plane. And so the video is really difficult to watch, and it's really kind of, you really feel for the poor citizens who are desperately trying to flee their home, right? They're trying to flee their own country and find some sort of refugee status somewhere else. And all the roads up to the airport are being completely blocked by cars. People haven't been able to get anywhere near any of the ports or any of the airports. So really, really scary scenes. And after you watch this video, Chad, the next image is going to show you that in this plane, they put hundreds, if not thousands of Afghanistan citizens in without seats, just randomly in the plane to get them out of the country. So this shows the pure desperation from those people on the ground, and the fact that this is a really dangerous situation. It's one of those where you can't quite fathom exactly what the plan is or what it looks like on the ground. So there's the image, Chad, of all the thousands and hundreds of people in this plane, in like a cargo plane, basically being shipped off to who knows where. So lots of questions as to what is going to be the response. Of course, the US are in a difficult position now, because in 20 years ago they would respond immediately, because that was kind of their MO. But they've done this so many times. They've gone into these regions, they've tried to install peace, they've tried to install democracy, they've spent a hell of a lot of money, and controversially, and haven't really succeeded. I mean, if you leave the country and hours later all of your work is gone, I mean, that's a bitter pill to swallow. So the question that I have, and I think everyone has, is this the end of American interventionism? Like, is it the end of the America being like, we are the good people of the world, we're going to go in and we're going to fight, we're going to figure it out? So we're all waiting to hear. Biden kind of gave a very mediocre response. We'll have to wait and see how things kind of plan out in the next couple of weeks. But also, what is the UN going to do? What is NATO going to do? What is the UK going to do, etc.? Because, it's a really tough situation.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just looking at this image, just pushing in a little bit, the kind of mixed emotions that you see here. A lot of people are actually relieved to be on that cargo ship and be leaving, and naturally others are really concerned for what their future might hold. I mean, just imagine being in that position, Barry, where you have to literally suddenly uproot your entire life, leave everything behind, and just try to survive ultimately, which is it's just something I can't comprehend myself. In terms of the UK, I did hear that they are planning to evacuate nearly 7,000 people, which is a big number, and you've got to wonder where they're going to take everyone. As far as I understand, this particular US flight went to Qatar. So where everyone's going to get settled, we're certainly yet to see. But loads of questions, Barry, loads of questions. And in terms of as things are on the ground, on the other side of the coin. So just to talk to your, this is not a case of kind of good or evil point of view. There's peace on the streets. So it depends how you define that. There are people standing there, militants with guns, who obviously, going to fight back for anyone who opposes them. But ultimately, there's no more fighting happening in Afghanistan. And I'm not saying that this is positive rule, but there certainly have been, some people are even happy just to have that sort of level of peace, even though it comes with so much uncertainty and especially with women's rights and education. What happens to the education system? Is it kind of, I heard a lot of people talking about worrying about it becoming like brainwashing type or that ideological type education rather than a balanced or level type system. And so loads of questions. I just couldn't put myself in this position and just imagine what all these people must be going through.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I just want to clarify my statement about the good versus evil chat, because it could be misinterpreted. I do think this is evil. I don't want to get that wrong. But all I'm saying is that we can't, it's too naive to think that these are just malicious actors and they're just doing it because they want to destroy the world, they want to destroy their country. It's like we have to understand the ideology behind this. And your point about the education, the brainwashing is spot on, because if you look at how these kind of dictatorships have happened over history and how these fundamentalist kind of ideas have transcended cultures and societies, it's through propaganda. It's through like a authoritarian government taking control of the curriculum, taking control of the media, taking control of the information that a country is given, and bending it to their specific point of view. And so where the internet is so good at democratizing information and giving everyone a voice and kind of bringing all that around, the opposite is where you get like mandated speech and mandated ideas, and that is dangerous. And so as a democracy, as we try and figure out how do we respond to these sorts of countries, whether it's North Korea, whether it's Russia, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's even if it's China in certain situations, we have to understand that we can't just fight this thing. It's not just war that's going to win this. We have to find a way to change the ideas, or to come through when it comes to economic sanctions or political sanctions, or try and find other ways to get to them. Because unfortunately, fighting just reinforces the idea that they're also fighting for the right cause, right? When you go and fight them, they're like, cool, they want to be martyrs. I mean, a lot of the terrorism we've seen is people being martyrs because they think they're doing something amazing that's going to get them into their version of heaven. And so it's a really, really complicated one. It reminds us, Chad, I saw a great tweet saying that freedom is not free. It's just a reminder that, like, to fight for freedom and to have the freedom that we have in our respective countries, Chad, we should not take that for granted. Like, I was thinking about like how we have the freedom here to say what we want. We can criticize the government. We can have different religions. We can have different backgrounds. And for all of South Africa's flaws, that freedom is really, really great. And the same in the UK. So I think we should keep that in mind as well as we build our democracies, is that freedom is not free. And this is an example of what happens if you let an ideology or a dogma get control of a government or control of a country. It's just a terrifying place to be, and it's not inclusive, it's not tolerant. It's this kind of one way or disappear. So yeah, our condolences to everyone on that side, and we'll keep watching the story over the next couple of weeks. Really tough to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess there's not much more to add at this point. It's just to kind of watch and see what happens. Hopefully, some positive intervention in the next couple of weeks. To go a complete 180 degrees, Barry. So to talk about this level of chaos and just this intense level of chaos, and to then contrast it with what's happening in New Zealand. It just feels, to mention those in the same sentence in the same week, just feels insane. So New Zealand has now entered a nationwide lockdown. Okay, so basically in Auckland, there was one COVID case, a single COVID case, Barry. And based on the assumption that it is the Delta variant, the government have decided to enter I think it's a 1 week lockdown in Auckland, and in the rest of the country, 3-day lockdown, which is just insane, really. If you consider the case numbers elsewhere in the world, obviously, New Zealand have pretty much lived a COVID-free experience for the bulk of this pandemic, and so there's a lot that they've done well. But in terms of that kind of reaction and whether it's it's justified, I'm keen to hear your take on it.
Oh, Chad, it's a really difficult one because it feels like government overreach to me. I must be honest. I,
Yeah.
I don't think it's justified. And if I was a citizen there right now, I'd be very frustrated because this is exactly the sort of thing we worried about when all of these new regulations came into place. Was, are we just giving governments the chance and the possibility and the power to just do what they will and just kind of restrict freedom
Yep.
whenever they want? And this is an example of that happening in the sense where, like, the Delta strain hasn't got out of control there. Like you say, one case. And yes, of course, you can talk about the risk of it spreading. You can talk about their slow vaccination program. You can talk about the risks when it comes to the healthcare system and whatnot. I get all that. But this sort of reaction just kind of, it pushes the wrong buttons in my opinion. I think that we need to start moving beyond COVID. And I know it sounds hollow to people who've lost family members and people who are still struggling with COVID and whatnot. We have to start to live with this disease. We cannot get into this idea that we're going to get this down to 0 cases, right?
Yeah,
So, like, the fact that New Zealand had 0 cases for a while is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's not like you can keep 0 forever. That's just not how these things work. And we've been chatting about that right from the beginning. So it's very much a misunderstanding, in my opinion, of what this virus is going to be for the next 10 years. If you think we're going to get rid of COVID before like 50 years' time, you got something coming, right? It's a virus we're going to have to learn to live with. And if you can't live with one case, Chad, then, I mean, you're going to live in lockdown for the next 20 years. So, I think it's a bit crazy, to be honest.
Yeah, I completely agree. I saw the headline and I just thought it was, absolutely ridiculous. Even though they have done really well, a single case, surely you can contact trace, a nationwide lockdown with all of the, economic effects and all that kind of thing. Just seems like an overreach, like you say. I've also seen, a lot coming out from, Kiwis who are elsewhere in the world, so who are not in New Zealand at the moment, not being able to get home. And I've heard, all sorts of stories of a lady who was on a 3-month visa in the US who is now pregnant and has a high-risk pregnancy and can't get back. She's applied for like an emergency, basically to get into the MIQ, which is the mandatory quarantine system, and has been rejected 6 times. So there seems to be this kind of divide between New Zealand people themselves, and I've heard it by speaking to friends who are from New Zealand. Where essentially you've got the people who are in New Zealand effectively ostracizing those who aren't, and saying it was your choice to leave. Now you've got to kind of deal with the consequences, which I mean, for anyone who's a citizen of any country, is a very hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the problem when you have these mismatches between the policies in different countries, right? When you're not all on the same page, and the US are like not letting people stay longer than their visas, and New Zealand are not letting you in, it really does get a bit tricky. And I think it almost becomes a moral conversation. People look down on you, Chad, as if like, okay, why did you travel then? Why did you leave? And it's very easy to get on that high horse and be like, well, of course you got COVID. Look at you. You did X, Y, and Z, or you did this, right? And it's just not. It's not a good way to live, and it's not a good way to kind of conduct yourself. And I think New Zealand have held themselves quite rightly as one of the countries that have done the best when it comes to managing COVID. And they've kind of got a bit of an ego about it. I think got a bit of a big head about it. But the fact is that they've had it much easier than every other country because they're an island in the middle of nowhere, and so it's very easy to kind of block yourself from the rest of the world. It's not as easy if you're a landlocked country or if you're a bigger country or kind of a more powerful economy in that sense. And so I think it's a weird one. I understand both sides of the story, but I just think that the moment you're giving your government the chance to lock down the entire country on the basis of one case of a virus that we're not going to get to 0 anyway, I think you're in trouble. And so I'm wondering what the fight back is going to be from the opposition in New Zealand and from the citizens themselves. I know if that happened in South Africa, people would just not even wouldn't follow the rules. They would just go out and do their own thing anyway. And so, I mean, they were doing that when there were thousands of cases, so never mind one case.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, yeah, we'll have to see what happens and how that lockdown goes down. But I agree, this thing is here with us. I think their vaccination rates are kind of at around 20% of the population. So as much as they've done good in other areas, they're falling behind in that one, a very important one in learning to deal with this. But yeah, we'll certainly follow it as things go on. Then let's move on, Barry, to some stuff we actually found interesting.
Stuff I found interesting.
All right, I'm going to start off today by going back like a number of, I don't even know how long ago was this, and this is a problem on this podcast is, Barry will find something interesting and he'll pop it up here, and naturally at some point I need to go and catch up, and vice versa. It happens from time to time, and we ended up talking about it twice. But I'm perfectly okay with that, Barry, because now that we are both on the same page, let's talk again about the magnificent masterpiece that was Parasite. It is, I think, free to watch on, I think it's Amazon Prime for all of those in the UK. And yeah, I gave it a watch this week, and just that trailer, and when you watch the trailer and you see all of the reviews and what people summarize, the trailer is like, it's super odd. You don't know what it is that you're going to watch. But one of the reviews that stuck with me is it takes you in a certain direction, and then all of a sudden it is something completely different. And of course I'm paraphrasing. I don't know the exact quote on that, but that's exactly what I found, Barry, where you are taken in this one direction. You kind of it's almost cringeworthy in a way. You're like, oh, this family are really taking advantage of this rich family. They're really nice people. And then it just turns completely. I loved the film elements, like the actual shots and scenes. The storytelling was just exceptional. And then I was really quite surprised about actually watching something in a foreign language, reading subtitles, and I was more surprised by my fiance being keen to do that, and at the end saying to me that she didn't even realize it by the end that she was even reading subtitles. So it says so much for all of the films that we've lost, all the films that we've not watched, because we've been put off by subtitles. But this one, if any of you listening have still not watched it, is one that you definitely need to see.
It's such a good point, Chad. I'm glad you finally got around to giving it a watch, because it really is a masterpiece. And like you say, the best way to watch it is not knowing anything about it.
Yep.
So if you haven't seen it, don't go and read reviews. Don't go and
Yep.
read plot lines. Just trust us and just sit down and watch it, because it is one of those movies that is very innovative in a way that I really appreciated. I don't know about you, Chad, but I felt that a lot of Hollywood movies in the last couple of years have been a little bit stale. Like the plot lines
Yeah,
are pretty
predictable.
stock standard. The characters aren't that interesting, and
Yeah.
you've got 8,000 superhero movies, and how many more can you actually do, right? So it was so cool to see Parasite, because it was a completely different experience, very innovative in the way, like you said, they directed it, the cinematography and all of that, but also just the way that the story unravels is so different to what we typically see in Hollywood. And I thought it was absolutely amazing. And I went and watched a bunch of interviews with the director and stuff afterwards, because I was so fascinated by it. And when you listen to him talk about how he put that thing together, it really is a proper masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
He thought about every single piece of that, Chad. And so that feeling you explained at the beginning, where you was like, oh, this is a weird genre. What are we actually watching here? That's all on purpose, because all he's trying to do is set up that foundation of just kind of comfort and, okay, cool, this is a bit of a strange movie. We're just going to kind of go with it. And then it hits you over the head towards the end with what you know. So yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think that it was a groundbreaking one, like you say, for foreign films. I kind of can parallel chat. I'm busy watching Money Heist at the moment, which was originally a Spanish film, Spanish series, sorry. And I'm watching an English dubbed version of that, and really enjoying kind of the unique eccentricities of Spanish theater and Spanish movies. And so that's really cool to see. So I'm hoping with Netflix kind of getting more involved in these foreign films and kind of bringing more of them to our eyes, hopefully we can kind of indulge in some of these new cultures and these new ways, and find some new directors and some new thinking. Because I don't know about you, Chad, but I'm not that interested to watch Spider-Man 63. I want to go and see something unique and something interesting, and Parasite is one of those.
Yeah, it's so true. And I don't know, have you found as you've become a little bit older, Barry, maybe that's why you're not keen on Spider-Man 63. I mean, there's been so many releases that are actually in the cinema right now that I've been wanting to go and watch. But I've kind of found excuses to not go and see them every single time. And so what's ended up happening is a lot of my favorite like Marvel films have kind of just passed by and I still haven't seen them, which is interesting. And like you say, I'm now drawn to these pieces with a lot more emotion and just intention behind them, I guess, where it's not simply just mindless entertainment, and it encourages thought and real like deep feelings. So yeah, this is definitely one of those. Highly recommend to go and watch it. I mean, just that contrast between the beginning where I was almost even like giggling some of the times at some of the kind of cultural pieces and some of the chirps between the family members, to the end, and it just grips you all the way through. And yeah, that ending, oh my gosh, just insane. So yeah, I'll not say too much more there, but I agree with you. Money Heist, I've heard good things about. Need to go and watch that as well. And
Chad, Money Heist is superb. You have to go and see it. It's. I'm only towards the end of the first season, so I'm still quite far behind. I know I'm catching up late, but it is absolutely superb. My favorite show at the moment. So I'm hoping that I'll come back and talk about that when I'm finished a decent part of it. But really, really brilliantly done. So you must check that out if you can.
Looking forward to hear all about that from you, Barry. Hope you've been taking some notes. So we got loads to chat about. I'm keen about that. The next thing I found interesting this week is the legend himself, Banksy. I'm sure you know of Banksy, Barry. And there's so many things to talk about here, because here is a guy who goes onto the streets of London and the rest of the UK and literally like vandalizes people's homes and vandalizes like public places, and what you end up having after that is councils that are proud of these pieces and people trying to protect the works and all of that kind of stuff, obviously because he is the legend that he is. I mean, he's got 11 million followers on Instagram. I mean, his artwork is exceptional. He uses like stencils. It is graffiti at the end of the day, But he's a mystery guy. No one knows what he looks like. He kind of struts along the streets and does his thing. And I wanted to talk today about his latest kind of IGTV video that he released on his Instagram channel, and that is the Great British Spraycation. So he went down, I think, to the coast somewhere. I'll have to pull up exactly where, and did his thing, Barry. I think he left a fairly big number of pieces in his wake. Obviously, released this video that he recorded while he was doing all of these, and you obviously wish you had seen him doing it, but somehow he's able to get in and out and not even be noticed, and leave behind all of these pieces. Now, the thing that I wanted to talk about today as well is that some of these pieces have been already protected by the places that where he actually laid them down, and so I've heard some of them have been like boarded up until they can figure out a way to protect them. Others have been defaced, Barry, which for me is also really very interesting, and I don't know whether that is actual locals not being happy with the artwork. Obviously, some of the artworks have like political type messages or undertones. Ultimately, this particular one we're looking at now with the boat, I believe the council removed that boat because it is covering like a drainage area, and obviously they didn't want that to clog up and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm keen to get your take on this in terms of how we've grown to love a man who look at this, strapping a tongue and some foam like an ice cream on a statue, like actually breaking the pavement so that he could spray a picture of a person shoveling on the wall right next to it. Where do we draw the line here, Barry, between art and vandalism? Keen to hear your thoughts.
Oh, Chad, it's such a good question, and I think it's one that I don't know anyone who doesn't want Banksy to exist in the world.
Sure.
Like I think that it's a net good for society in my mind because of how innovative he is and how interesting he is, and the fact that he is this mystery man that no one knows who he is. And so from a neutral perspective, obviously you love seeing it. You love kind of going on Instagram and seeing him do it. I have vivid memory of that painting that shredded itself while it was being auctioned. Like those kind of moments are just priceless when it comes to art, and that's what art is supposed to do. Art's supposed to challenge us. The whole point of art is to push out of your comfort zone and to make a point and to really kind of raise your voice and say something. And the best way to do that, Chad, is to do something that is polarizing and do something that gets us talking about it. And so I'm all for it. If it was my house, maybe I wouldn't be for it. If it was my wall that he was graffitiing on, but like you say, it's become almost a cultural hero of Britain in a sense, and he is one of the most famous artists in the world for a reason. And yeah, so I don't know. I don't see it as vandalism, Chad. I think that
Cool.
as long as it's not overly kind of provocative, and some of these, like you say, have a message behind them, but I don't think they're crazy provocative. It's just interesting to see how he's going about the world, and I can't imagine living that life, Chad, where you're doing these random kind of master vigilante artworks all around town, and you can't tell anybody about them. You just got to pretend that you're some random bloke who's driving an RV around Britain.
Well, this is the thing: is you've got an Instagram page and you have a website where I think he actually publishes each of the pieces that he does. And from some of the outcry from some of these pieces, he's actually gone onto the website and removed. So they were previously recognized there. He then removes them, because of the messaging being, touching the wrong nerve type of thing. I mean, the next dimension to this is those people who kind of added, so defaced and changed and added to his artwork. So in this first one here, we've got like a crane up on top of people sitting on a bench. And then some random person who I think his name is Emo, because they've written there, Banksy collaboration Emo, decided, they put some teddy bears because, clearly that's what Banksy intended. And so, yeah, I mean, I find that really, really quite interesting. I mean, this particular one here, Barry, is like a model village. And what they've now done is, his particular piece here wasn't exactly, pleasing to the eye. It's literally go big or go home. He's written on the side of this little model hut. And they've actually like sealed it up and said, okay, cool. Now, how are we going to protect this thing? People have to be supervising when people are able to kind of actually attend and look at this. And so it's just crazy for me. Like just the idea that this one guy is so well recognized to the point where his works is so kind of fought over by councils and residents alike. I mean, look at this one. This one here was actually covered up by the council because of the actual message it was sending. So very interesting. I find this kind of thing fascinating. And you're right. Whenever I see a Banksy piece, I'm just excited to be near it.
He's a marketing genius, Chad. Like no matter which way you look at it, he thrives on this sort of controversy. And when a city council is painting over your artwork, Chad, it means that you matter. It means that you're doing something of substance, right? And so like he understands how this game is played. He understands the scarcity idea. He understands the mystery. He's not on Instagram Live talking to his fans. He's being very much in the dark, just doing his thing. And I'm glad that people like him exist in the world, whether you like his art or not. He's an innovator and a maverick in that sense, and there's only one of him, and that's really special. So yeah, I find it hilarious that some people are kind of putting the glass box around or trying to make some money off the Banksy painting that appears on their wall.
Exactly.
Which I totally get as well. So yeah, really, really cool. And if you've never looked at a Banksy piece, now is the time to go and check out what he's done, because he's a fascinating artist. And he's not the kind of artist that you can look at and be like, oh, I don't get it. Or he's not one of those abstract modern artists. He's very, very concrete in that sense. So yeah, very cool.
Yeah, really cool indeed. I mean, just really cool for any artist to have that distinctive style that immediately you recognize their work. I guess that's what every artist in any field are aiming for ultimately at the end of the day, and he's definitely got that nailed. Barry, we've got some stuff to look ahead at, so let's then move on. It's our next section.
Looking ahead.
Now, Chad, whenever Boston Dynamics, the famed robotics company, comes out with a new YouTube video, I'm
Yep.
on it like wildfire. It's like as soon as I see that notification or as soon as I see that new video, I am clicking on that thing straight away. And they've got a brand new one out that came out today at the time we're recording, Chad. And it's these two robots doing parkour. And it's hard to explain. You have to go and see it. So if you're listening right now, please go and check out the YouTube video. It is pretty insane. And as you watch this robot doing parkour, jumping off all these different surfaces, up and down, does a backflip towards the end, it just reminds us that robots are getting better and better and better, and they're looking more and more human every single time I see one of these videos. It's a little bit scary in some cases, and I think it's just amazing that the technological advancements we've seen in robotics just over the past 5 to 10 years, Chad. It's absolutely insane. Jumping over boxes, kind of doing this, and then they do these synchronized backflips.
Oh, wow.
Here we go, and bang!
Oh, wow.
It's really
backflips.
insane to watch. Double backflip, a little celebration, and that is it. So it's just a reminder, Chad, of where robotics is going. I think we've chatted about the Spot, the dog robot that we saw in a couple episodes ago, and how that's have some industrial use cases and a lot of the businesses. But these human robots, Chad, and the only use case that comes to my mind is taking over the world. So I'm a little bit worried about that one.
Yeah, I mean, what does a robot need to be doing parkour for? Although, to be fair, it's a very dangerous sport. So if you could have a robot simulate it before an actual human goes in and does it, that could be a use case for a very, very small percentage of the population. But yeah, that is very impressive to see, definitely. Obviously, with the coordinated backflip, it is certainly like pre-programmed. So I think we can rest assured from that point of view that this wasn't freestyle parkour, because that would be a bit crazy. And obviously, if a robot could do that freestyle, that would add to its use case, because having a robot in a factory able to dodge obstacles, jump over it, go do all sorts of kind of things, it just increases the potential uses for to have those robots. So yeah, really impressive. I know how much you love and care about Boston Dynamics as a company. So yeah, thanks for sharing it, to be honest. I mean, in terms of the innovation that you've seen, obviously we've got the dog, we've now got these human looking robots. Is there much else that they're currently working on, or are they kind of looking at perfecting these two models, if you'd like?
So I think those are the two of the most widely known models, but they've got about 5 or 6 different robots that they work
Right.
on. So this one isn't like a commercial product at the moment. This is kind of their baby that they're testing out a lot of cool stuff on. But when you look at the dog robots, and they've got a lot more that are less impressive from the eye. They're not as aesthetic because they're not look like a human or a dog. They're just basic warehouse robots, but they are powering a lot of the logistics industry around the world. And if you think about Amazon and those companies like that who are starting to make their warehousing completely automated, it's those sorts of robots that they really make their money on. And so those are the ones that you're not going to see the videos of them doing backflips, but they're really making a difference in logistics and in manufacturing around the world. And that's where the world is going in that sense. A lot of this automation is coming down the pipe very, very quickly. And if you're an Amazon employee and you're one of those packers or you're one of those pickers, I mean, your job is not secure. It really isn't, because these robots are getting better and better all the time. I think what's quite exciting about these human robots is that the use cases that we see are potentially using that for disabled people. So taking the arm, for example, and if they can figure out how to make the arm as dexterous as possible and really work really powerfully, if you have an arm amputated or your arm doesn't work anymore, you could theoretically use one of those robotic pieces, and that's quite exciting. So I see use cases in the biomedical space, but also just in warehouses. If you can have a basic robot that isn't doing backflips but that's carrying boxes around, it's going to make a big difference to your overall line, because they don't need holidays, they don't need to sleep, they can go 24/7,
Exactly.
all of those good things, right? And so yeah, Boston Dynamics is really on the forefront of this. They are very much an R&D type company, but they're slowly starting to move into commercial commercial expansion, and those dog robots are doing really well. They've sold tens of thousands of those to industrial companies around the world. So yeah, it's just really cool to see the way they do it, and their social media is just brilliant. They just know how to build intrigue and build these. I mean, this thing probably took a lot of money, a lot of time to figure out, but that 2-minute video is worth its weight in gold. Like if you're a young smart person and you're interested in robotics, that's the company you want to work for. And so I'm assuming they're just sucking up all the great talent and all the excited, ambitious people who are working in robotics, because why wouldn't you want to work with a company where the robots are doing parkour, right?
Yeah.
And so it's this great understanding of how to use publicity, how to use viral videos to build awareness around your company, and then you commercialize things that actually have a use case. So I really love the business, as you can hear.
Yeah, we all knew that already, Barry. You didn't have to tell us again. But yeah, no, love the passion, and yeah, I mean, it certainly is great marketing. Even though it is literally just them showing off what this thing can do. And just to your point about not needing holidays, and just the efficiency gains, the predictability, all that kind of stuff. It's terrifying. For all kind of human workers whose jobs are potentially replaceable. This is by physical, robots, but ultimately, artificial intelligence is ticking on each day as we go, and so many of these tasks that we do, which have kind of measurable inputs and outputs, let's say. Might actually be able to be replaced. So absolutely terrifying. Field will no doubt keep a beady eye on. Barry, do you have anything more to say there, or shall we move on?
I mean, I could talk about AI for hours, Chad. So it's probably a good thing that you cut me off. But I think it's spot on, and we'll have to watch what happens in the next couple of years. But very excited about the industry. So now, before I get carried away, Chad, let's move on to develop and grow.
Develop and grow.
Flying through this episode, Barry. We are flying through in good time. Develop and grow this week. So obviously at the top of the episode, I kind of forgot to mention my disclaimer that because of the way I was feeling this morning, I may not be as sharp and snappy as usual, although that's not the case either, because I to call myself sharp and snappy is not two words I would use for myself. But anyway, what it has done to me this morning is, and this always happens, Barry, where you kind of take for granted how good being healthy feels. And so as soon as you have an ailment of any kind, you just wish you could be back, and how much better you would, how much more you'd care for yourself and all of that kind of stuff. And so it's just a reminder, to me, and hopefully now to the listeners as well, that, appreciate and cherish being healthy. It's a perfect sort of goal to just strive to be healthy. We talk about prioritizing the sleep, ultimately exercise, but just also mental health, knowing where you are at any particular point in time. And then just appreciating it. Like, having health, it's a cliche, but health is wealth. And it's so true. And this COVID crisis has really, shown us that too, where, just to be able to have loved ones and be able to, care for them, show them how much you love them, both being healthy, being able to have that hug, all of that kind of stuff. We just really ought to look after ourselves a lot more and just appreciate it when our bodies are working as intended.
And we know this, Chad. We've heard this thousands of times, but somehow we always find ways to deprioritize it. Work will get in the way, or like other things you're doing gets in the way, and we forget to take care of ourselves. We forget to focus on that health. And unfortunately, you kind of get used to that normal, Chad. If you're operating at, say, 50% and you're eating bad foods and you're not sleeping well and you're kind of not exercising, you kind of assume that, okay, cool, this is what living is about. And I'm just going to feel fatigued all the time. I'm just going to feel down. I'm going to feel flat, or I'm going to feel ill or sick or whatever. And when you actually fix that and you realize, oh wait, there's a whole nother level of living that I just didn't even realize existed, just by eating some vegetables or drinking some water or getting some good sleep, right? And so it's one of those things that we we all know intellectually that health is important, and we'll probably all say to each other, yes, my health is important to me. I really am. But do our actions actually show that? Are we actually doing what we need to in order to keep ourselves going? I've certainly found that in this last week I've been working very long hours, and I've got this tendency when I'm working long hours to eat junk food because
Yep.
I'm just looking for some sugar, looking for a high, looking for something. And even though I know it's bad for me and it's going to make it even harder to work those long hours, I still do it because it's that instant gratification of saying, cool, I can eat chocolate now and I'll feel better for a couple of minutes. But it backfires in the long run. And even though I know that, I don't act that out. And same with being ill. It's only when we're sick that we realize, oh,
Mm.
wait, if I just looked after myself and I didn't do X, Y, or Z, then I wouldn't have to deal with all of this pain, all of this suffering. So a very important reminder for us, Chad, and it's something that we have to keep like focusing on. Health has to be something you prioritize amongst everything else, because it's that lead domino that kind of affects every other part of your life.
Yeah, it totally does. And you're so right about kind of getting used to your level of, your imperfect level of health. So, when was the last time you went to the dentist, for example, Barry? I mean, I haven't gone in ages, and there's a couple of fillings that need some work. But it's one of those where you just, you get into the rhythms, you kind of just get used to it. There's always something more important to do. And that is not okay. Like, we need to start prioritizing it because it's very important. So yeah, just a gentle reminder for everyone, and hopefully you prioritize it in ways that we haven't ourselves. But we're learning, we're trying, we're developing, and that's all that counts. So Barry, I think that basically brings us to the end of the episode. I did want to mention that next week we have no episode because I will be taking to the skies again, and I've been in consultation with my fiance, and holiday times are not podcast times, and so I get that. I get that. That's okay. So yeah, we're gonna try and switch off, relax, and come back feeling pretty fresh. So looking forward to that.
I'm very jealous, Chad. You're going to have to come back in 2 weeks' time and give us a full rundown of how the trip went. I know I'll be seeing lots of cool photos and stuff on your social medias. So I'm very jealous, buddy. I'm going to have to live vicariously through you. But I think it's the right idea. Get disconnected. I think we all miss some of that sometimes, right?
Definitely.
We go on holiday and we still think we need to be completely plugged into the world. And I think it's a mistake. So it's much better to take that time off and fully disconnect and kind of get away from things, because that time alone, that time with a partner, that time to just enjoy life is few and far between, especially after the past 18 months or so that we've had.
Oh.
And so, Chad, I'm jealous, but I wish you all the best and hope you travel safe. And we look forward to hearing all the stories on your return.
Yeah, thank you very much. Looking forward to it as well. Hopefully all goes as planned, obviously with regulations and restrictions. It's not as easy as it once was. Lots of rapid tests and PCRs on return. I think now, because I've had my second jab within 14 days of returning, should be all good. So hopefully it just all goes smoothly, I guess is my main point. But I agree, it's important to kind of shut off and come back feeling refreshed. So thanks, Barry. We'll see you when I get back. In the meantime, thanks for listening to today's episode. As always, we love to hear from you. Please share us through your network, because ultimately we want to reach as many ears as possible. Last but not least, check us out on all social media platforms. We're on Twitter at @across_podcast. We're on Instagram at @acrossthepondcast, and we're on Facebook as well, Across the Pond Podcast, and you'll find this on YouTube too. There's a link right down in the episode notes below. That's all from me, Barry. Anything more to add?
I just wanted to say thank you to we got quite a few messages this past week talking about how much people enjoyed the last episode, and I can't even tell you how much it makes our day when we get those messages. So thank you to those who kind of sent that feedback, and last episode clearly was a good one that resonated with a lot of people. So we really appreciate those messages. Those messages are our fuel, and so if you are listening from wherever you are in the world right now, let us know. We really do love to hear where you are, who you are, and where you're listening from, because after all, the show is for you, and we want to keep making it better and keep making something that is valuable and worth your time, because your time is super important, and the fact that you spend an hour with us every week is incredible. So we're very grateful for that. But until then, we will see you in 2 weeks' time for yet another episode of Across the Pond.